The rain had been falling for hours, pounding against the windows of Ethan's small apartment like a relentless drumbeat. He had been lying awake, staring at the ceiling, his mind running through the usual loops of worry about his son. Since the divorce 6 months earlier, nights had felt heavier, lonelier. Every time he tried to sleep, images of Daniel's thin frame and tired little eyes would creep back. He told himself it was just his imagination, that Claire was caring for him the way a mother should. But the unease never really left. At 12:17 a.m., his phone lit up on the nightstand. The shrill sound cut through the quiet room, making his stomach drop. He snatched it up, expecting maybe a wrong number. Instead, a small, trembling voice filled his ear. "Dad, I'm alone. Starving, please save me." For a moment, Ethan thought he was dreaming. He sat up, clutching the phone tighter. "Danny? What do you mean? Where's Mom?" His words tumbled out fast, his heart hammering. There was silence on the line, except for shallow breathing. Then, in a whisper so faint it barely carried, "She locked the door? I can't find her." Ethan swung his legs out of bed, already pulling on jeans with one hand while the other clutched the phone. The world outside roared with thunder, but his mind only heard his son's plea. "I'm coming, buddy. Stay put. Don't move. Daddy's on his way." He grabbed his car keys, heart pounding so violently it felt like his chest might split. As he locked the apartment door behind him, guilt poured over him in waves. He had fought so hard during the custody battle, begged the judge to let him keep Daniel more often. But the court had sided with Claire. She had the house, the stability, while Ethan was left with weekends. Every warning sign he had seen, Daniel's hollow cheeks, the way his clothes hung loose, had been brushed aside. And now his son had called him at midnight, begging for food. The drive felt endless. Rain hammered the windshield, the wipers barely keeping pace. Headlights carved through sheets of water as Ethan gripped the wheel with white knuckles. His mind swirled with questions. Where had Claire gone? How long had Daniel been alone? Had he eaten anything at all? He pressed harder on the gas, ignoring the way his tires slid on the slick road. Flashes of memory stabbed at him as he drove. Daniel's last weekend visit. How he had devoured the sandwich Ethan made, as if he hadn't eaten all day. The way his eyes had darted away when Ethan asked about dinner with Mom. And Claire with her dismissive tone. "You overthink everything. He's fine." But he wasn't fine. Tonight proved it. By the time Ethan turned onto Claire Street, his pulse was a drumbeat in his ears. The houses were dark, curtains drawn tight against the storm. When he reached her driveway, his stomach twisted. The house looked lifeless, no lights except for a faint blue glow flickering from an upstairs window. He killed the engine, rain splashing over him as he bolted to the front door. He hammered his fist against the wood. "Claire! Daniel!" His voice was nearly drowned out by the storm. No answer. He pounded again, harder, until the skin of his knuckles stung. Still nothing. Desperation surged. Ethan shoved his shoulder against the door. It groaned but didn't give. He braced himself, rammed it again. This time it cracked open with a splintering sound. Inside, the air hit him like a wave, stale, sour, thick with neglect. Toys lay scattered on the floor, not in the chaotic way children usually left them, but abandoned, untouched. The silence was crushing, broken only by the hum of electronics upstairs. Ethan's chest tightened. He called out softly, almost afraid of what he'd find. "Danny!" No answer, only the flicker of light from above. He climbed the staircase, each creak of the steps echoing in the hollow house. With every step, dread knotted tighter in his stomach. At the top of the stairs, the glow grew brighter, spilling from the crack beneath Daniel's bedroom door. Ethan reached for the handle with a trembling hand. He wasn't sure what he would see, but every instinct told him that what waited inside was worse than anything he'd imagined. He pushed the door open and froze. Ethan stood frozen in the doorway, his breath caught in his throat. Daniel's bedroom looked nothing like the warm, safe space it once had been. The soft blue glow he'd seen from the street came from a laptop on the desk, its screen casting eerie shadows on the walls. The faint hum of electronics filled the silence, broken only by the low sound of Daniel's whimpering. The boy sat curled in the corner near his bed, knees pulled tightly to his chest, clutching his stuffed bear like a lifeline. His pajamas hung loosely on his frame, far too big for his thin body now. When his eyes lifted to Ethan, they were wide and wet, and then he scrambled across the floor into his father's arms. "Dad!" Daniel buried his face against Ethan's chest, small hands clutching at his shirt. His body felt frail, his bones too sharp beneath the skin. Ethan's heart shattered. "Danny, it's okay. I've got you now." Ethan's voice cracked, equal parts fury and relief. He tried to keep his tone gentle, but his pulse thundered. He looked around the room, taking it in, the strange arrangement of small tripods, each with a camera attached, their red recording lights blinking. They weren't hidden, they were deliberate. Ethan's stomach churned. Why were cameras pointed at his son's bed? He turned back to Daniel. "Buddy, did you eat dinner tonight?" Daniel shook his head quickly, his voice muffled. "There wasn't anything. I tried to find cereal, but..." His words trailed off, as if he was afraid to say more. Ethan held him tighter, anger building in his chest like a storm. He wanted to storm downstairs, drag Claire back here, demand answers. But something stopped him, the nagging sense that what he was seeing was bigger than neglect. He glanced at the laptop. The screen showed a chat box, scrolling nonstop. Lines of text blurred together. "Poor little guy. Breaks my heart. He looks so weak tonight. Donated $25. Stay strong, sweetheart." Ethan's blood ran cold. His son wasn't just starving, he was being watched. He placed Daniel gently on the bed. "Stay here, champ. I'm right here with you." Then he stepped toward the laptop. The live stream was still running, broadcasting Daniel's room to hundreds, maybe thousands of strangers. His child's misery had been turned into a show. Ethan's chest heaved. His fists curled tight, nails digging into his palms. The betrayal pressed down like a weight he couldn't carry. A sound behind him made his head snap toward the door. Footsteps. Slow, measured, climbing the stairs. Claire appeared in the doorway. Her hair was disheveled, her makeup smudged, like someone who had been out too long and didn't care how she looked coming home. Her eyes went wide when she saw Ethan standing there. And for the first time since the divorce, she looked startled, caught. "What are you doing here?" Her voice was sharp, defensive, as if he were the intruder. Ethan's voice roared back before he could stop himself. "What am I doing here? Daniel called me at midnight saying he was alone and starving. And I walk in to find cameras pointed at his bed? What the hell are you doing, Claire?" Her face shifted quickly, guilt flickering for just a moment before her jaw tightened. She crossed her arms, adopting the cool, dismissive tone he knew too well. "You don't understand. We need the money, Ethan. This is for him. People care about children who need help. They want to give. By filming him like this? By letting him starve?" Ethan's voice broke, the fury shaking in it. Claire's lips pressed into a thin line. "Don't be dramatic. He's fine. You're always so overprotective." Ethan turned back to Daniel, who sat trembling on the bed, his eyes glued to the cameras like he was afraid to even blink. The boy's face was pale, his body weak, and yet Claire had the audacity to say he was fine. Something darker was at play. Ethan could feel it in the pit of his stomach. He turned back to her, his voice low and dangerous now. "Turn it off. Right now." Claire's eyes narrowed. "Or what?" Ethan stepped forward, closing the space between them, his voice steady but seething. "Or you'll regret it." For a brief second, her mask slipped. Panic flickered in her eyes before she quickly hid it again. But Ethan had seen it, the truth hiding behind her defiance. Something was very, very wrong. The tension in the room was thick, heavier than the storm still pounding outside. Daniel's shallow breathing was the only fragile sound cutting between his parents' voices. Ethan's eyes locked on Claire, fury and disbelief fighting for dominance. She stood with her arms crossed, trying to project control, but her foot tapped nervously against the floorboards. Ethan lowered his voice, sharp but steady. "He hasn't eaten. He's skin and bones, Claire. Look at him. This isn't normal. This isn't parenting." Claire scoffed, though her eyes flicked away from Daniel for a split second. "Don't start your dramatics again. You've always been too emotional, too quick to panic. I'm the one who provides stability." "Stability? Ethan snapped, pointing at the cameras. What do you call this? Exploiting him? Broadcasting him to strangers like some charity case? Claire's mask cracked for a second. Her lips twitched before she turned her gaze cold again. You don't get it. People out there want to help. They donate because they care. Every dollar helps me keep this house, his clothes, his school. Ethan's stomach turned. He glanced at the laptop again, at the endless stream of faceless comments and donations. Strangers praising their generosity, completely blind to the fact that Daniel sat trembling and malnourished on the bed, just feet away. Daniel shifted closer to Ethan, gripping his father's hand. His voice was barely above a whisper. Dad, do I have to sleep on camera again? The word stabbed Ethan like a knife. He crouched beside him, brushing the boy's damp hair from his forehead. No, buddy, not anymore. His voice cracked with emotion, though he forced a reassuring smile. Claire's expression hardened. Don't promise things you can't keep. He's fine. He doesn't even understand. Ethan stood, his anger boiling. He understands enough to beg me not to make him sleep on camera. That's all I need to know. Claire took a step closer, her face inches from his, her perfume sharp under the sour smell of the room. And what's your plan, Ethan? Take him home? March into court and tell them I let him go hungry? They won't believe you. They never do. They know you're impulsive. Reckless. That's why I got custody. Her words hit where she intended. Ethan's jaw tightened. She wasn't just confident. She was prepared. He suddenly saw the pattern. Her calmness. The way she already had excuses lined up. She wasn't caught off guard. She had been expecting this. A faint dread settled in Ethan's chest. Something about tonight didn't add up. He turned back to Daniel, trying to focus. The boy's eyelids were heavy, his movements sluggish. It wasn't just hunger. Ethan recognized the unnatural drowsiness, the way Daniel's head bobbed slightly even as he tried to stay awake. His eyes darted to the bedside table again, half-empty bottles of children's sleep syrup, juice boxes with straws still in them. The realization clawed at him. Claire! Ethan's voice shook with restrained rage. What have you been giving him? Her arms stiffened across her chest. Don't accuse me of things you don't understand. Ethan stepped closer, pointing at the bottles. Don't lie to me. You've been drugging him, haven't you? Keeping him weak. Keeping him camera-ready. Claire flinched at his words, her facade cracking just slightly. She opened her mouth to reply, but no words came. Instead, she turned her back, pacing toward the doorway, muttering, You're twisting everything. But Ethan could see it now, the pieces falling into place. Daniel's exhaustion, the live stream's popularity, the staged image of suffering. Claire wasn't just neglectful. She was orchestrating it. Ethan's hand trembled as he rubbed Daniel's back, fighting the urge to explode. He wanted to grab her, to shout, to make her admit the truth. But deep down, he knew rage wouldn't save his son. He needed proof. He needed to think. Still, his voice broke the silence, low and raw. If you hurt him again, Claire, if you so much as touch another bottle of that stuff, I swear you'll regret it. Claire paused in the doorway, her silhouette lit by the faint blue glow. She didn't look back, but her words floated coldly through the room. You already regret enough, Ethan. Don't make it worse for yourself. The door clicked shut behind her, leaving Ethan trembling with Daniel in his arms, and the storm still raging outside. Ethan sat on the edge of Daniel's bed, holding the boy close as thunder rolled outside. The small frame in his arms felt fragile, too light for a child his age. Daniel's breathing slowed, but his eyelids fluttered in the dim glow of the laptop screen. He fought to stay awake, clinging to his father's sleeve as if afraid he would vanish if he let go. Ethan stroked his son's hair. It's okay, buddy. I'm here now. You're safe. His voice was steady, but inside his chest, rage simmered hot and heavy. Claire's words replayed in his head, her cold confidence, her insistence that no one would believe him. She had sounded rehearsed, like she had been preparing for this moment all along. Something gnawed at him. The call. That midnight plea that had ripped him from bed. Daniel's weak body, his exhaustion, the syrup bottles by the nightstand. None of it lined up with the voice that had begged for help. Ethan looked down at his son. Danny, when you called me tonight, were you alone in this room? Daniel's brow furrowed faintly. I didn't call. His words were slow, heavy, as if they weighed too much for him to carry. I was asleep. Ethan froze, his pulse hammering. You're sure? Daniel nodded weakly, his head resting against his father's chest. I was so tired. I didn't call. I couldn't. A chill spread through Ethan's veins. If Daniel hadn't called, then who had? He turned sharply toward the desk. Claire's phone lay there, screen dark but unlocked. His hand trembled slightly as he picked it up, scrolling through her recent activity. His stomach twisted when he found it. A scheduled voicemail, time-stamped at 12:15 a.m., sent directly to his number. The exact words replayed in his memory. Dad, I'm alone, starving, please save me. The message had never come from Daniel. It was Claire. The room seemed to tilt. Ethan steadied himself against the desk, bile rising in his throat. The cameras, the donations, the bottles of syrup. It wasn't just negligence. It was orchestrated cruelty. Claire had staged the call to drag him here at the dead of night, knowing his panic would make him reckless. If he had burst into the house and lost control, she would have had proof, evidence to show the court that he was unstable, dangerous. Ethan's breath shook as the weight of it hit him. She wasn't just exploiting Daniel for strangers online. She was building a case to destroy him, too. Behind him, Daniel stirred. Dad! His small voice was weak, laced with fear. Ethan forced calm into his tone, tucking the phone into his pocket. It's okay, champ. Go back to sleep. I've got you. But he couldn't sleep. Not now. Not ever again under her roof. The sound of footsteps crept back up the stairs. Claire reappeared in the doorway, her face arranged into a mask of calm, though her eyes darted quickly to the phone in Ethan's hand. You should go, she said flatly, her voice cold. Dragging him out in this weather, barging into my home. What do you think the court will say when they hear about this? Ethan stood slowly, positioning himself between Daniel and Claire. His voice was low, controlled, but laced with steel. The court won't save you this time. Her smirk faltered just for a heartbeat. You don't have proof. Ethan's hand tightened around her phone in his pocket. He had more than proof. He had the plan she thought she'd hidden. The storm outside cracked loud enough to rattle the windows. Daniel stirred again, whimpering softly in his sleep. Ethan glanced down at his son, then back at Claire. For the first time, he saw her not just as negligent or careless, but as dangerous. And he realized something chilling. Tonight wasn't just about saving Daniel. Tonight was about ending Claire's game before she destroyed them both. The storm rattled the windows as Ethan stood his ground, his body shielding Daniel from Claire's shadow in the doorway. The glow from the laptop screen flickered across the walls, casting her face half in light, half in darkness. The perfect reflection of the double life she was leading. Claire leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, her tone deliberately calm. You always think you're the hero, Ethan, but you're not. You're the one who barges in, breaks doors, yells in the middle of the night. You look unhinged. Judges don't like unstable fathers. Ethan clenched his jaw, forcing his breathing to slow. He couldn't give her what she wanted, an outburst, a scene she could twist against him later. He tucked her phone deeper into his pocket, steadying himself. What I found tonight speaks louder than your lies. Her eyes narrowed. She stepped closer into the room, her gaze flicking to Daniel asleep on the bed. Careful, Ethan. You don't want to make promises you can't keep. Ethan positioned himself firmly in her path. His voice was steady, but underneath, fury boiled. He called me starving. He's weak, he can barely stay awake, and you're filming it for strangers. That ends tonight. Claire tilted her head, smirking, but her fingers twitched nervously at her side. And what's your plan? March to the police? They'll laugh in your face. All they'll see is a father who broke into his ex-wife's home at midnight. And I'll show them the footage, your rage, your threats. Ethan froze. The cameras, they weren't just for live streaming. They were recording. Every second of his voice raised, every movement toward her, captured for her to weaponize. His stomach sank. She hadn't been caught off guard. She had been waiting for him. Claire's smile widened when she saw the realization hit him. See? You're playing right into my hands. For a moment, Ethan's fists clenched at his sides. He wanted to smash the cameras, rip down the cords, scream at her until the walls shook. But he forced himself still. If he gave in to that impulse, she won. Instead, he glanced at Daniel, fragile and curled on the bed, the faint rise and fall of his chest grounding him. Ethan drew a slow breath. No, Claire. Not this time. Her brow furrowed slightly at his tone. It wasn't the reaction she expected. Ethan turned deliberately toward the laptop, leaning in to examine the feed. The chat was still scrolling, sympathy pouring in, money flashing across the screen. But now, with Claire standing in the room, Ethan noticed something new, occasional comments about the father and conflict. His gut twisted. Were they watching this too? Turn it off, Ethan demanded. Claire's smirk faltered, just a flicker. If I turn it off, the donations stop. And if the donations stop, how do you think I'll keep a roof over his head? How do you think he gets food? Ethan's voice sharpened, low but deadly. You call starving him food? For the first time, her face cracked, anger flashing raw. Don't talk to me about sacrifice, Ethan. You don't know what it's like to hold everything together while you play weekend dad. Her words stung, but Ethan steadied himself. He had more than anger now, he had evidence. The phone in his pocket, the bottles of syrup, the cameras still blinking red. He forced his tone calm, almost too calm. You've crossed a line you can't come back from. Claire leaned closer, whispering as if savoring her control. And who's going to believe you? You're just a guest in his life now. I'm the one with custody. I decide what happens to him. The weight of her words pressed hard against him, but Ethan didn't flinch. He placed a steady hand on Daniel's shoulder, his gaze locked on Claire. Not anymore. Claire stepped back, unsettled by the certainty in his voice. For the first time, she realized she wasn't in complete control. And as the storm outside raged louder, Ethan knew one thing with clarity. Tonight, the battle for his son had truly begun. The room fell into a heavy silence after Ethan's last words. Daniel stirred faintly on the bed, whimpering in his sleep, the soft sound cutting through the storm outside. Ethan's eyes never left Claire. For once, her smirk had faded, replaced by a wary flicker in her gaze. He stepped toward the laptop. The live stream was still running, hundreds of anonymous usernames sending heart emojis and sympathy, donations flashing like a scoreboard. Ethan leaned closer, scanning the screen. Among the usual comments, poor boy, sending love. A few stood out, chilling him. Keep him weak, they give more. The dad showing up is even better content. Drama sells. Don't stop now. Ethan's breath caught. His throat went dry as the realization spread. This wasn't just a live stream for pity. It was an entire community feeding off Daniel's suffering, egging it on, rewarding it with money. Claire wasn't just documenting his struggles. She was cultivating them. He turned slowly to face her, fury simmering just beneath the surface. You've been using him, not just to raise awareness like you claim. You've been orchestrating this, making sure he stays sick, tired, hungry because it pays better. Claire's eyes flashed defensively. You think anyone would care if he looked happy? Do you think people open their wallets for kids who look fine? They want to feel sorry. They want to feel like heroes when they click donate. I'm giving them that. And in return, we survive. Ethan's voice shook, sharp with disbelief. Survive? By drugging your own son? By humiliating him in front of strangers? Her face tightened, but she didn't deny it. Instead, she whispered coldly, don't act like you wouldn't do the same if you had to. You don't know the pressure I'm under. Ethan's chest heaved. For a moment, anger clawed at him, begging to be released. But then he looked at Daniel, his small hand twitching in restless sleep, and he knew losing control would only hand her more power. He straightened, pulling Claire's phone from his pocket. You set me up. That call wasn't from him. You staged it. Her face drained of color for a split second, before she quickly forced her composure back. You broke into my house at midnight. You grabbed my phone. Who do you think they'll believe? Ethan's voice hardened. The voicemail is proof. The timestamp, the recording, the fact that my son says he never made the call. That's more than enough to show what you're doing. Claire's lips pressed into a thin line, her jaw tight. For the first time tonight, true fear flickered behind her eyes. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. You'll destroy us both if you go to the police. Think about him. Do you want him dragged through investigations? Custody hearings? Reporters digging into our lives? Her words struck like venom, twisting truth and thread into one. Ethan hesitated for a fraction of a second. Not because he doubted her guilt, but because he knew she was right about one thing. Exposing her would drag Daniel through hell too. Daniel shifted again, murmuring in his sleep, "No more cameras, Dad." Ethan's chest clenched. That tiny plea shattered the last hesitation in him. He met Claire's gaze, his voice low and steady, no longer trembling with anger, but anchored with resolve. "You've already destroyed enough. This ends tonight." Claire's composure cracked. Her eyes darted to the cameras still blinking, then to the laptop, then back to Ethan. For the first time, she looked cornered. Outside, the storm grew louder, lightning flashing through the window, illuminating the room in harsh bursts. The shadows danced across her face, making her look almost unrecognizable. Not the woman he once loved, but a stranger who had traded her own child's safety for a stream of donations. Ethan moved to the desk and shut the laptop with a sharp snap. The glow vanished, plunging the room into darkness except for the lightning outside. The red lights on the cameras blinked stubbornly on, recording everything. Claire's voice broke the silence, cold and sharp as glass. "You don't know what you just done." But Ethan didn't flinch. He pulled Daniel closer, holding him protectively. "I know exactly what I've done. I've stopped you." And as thunder shook the walls, he knew this was only the beginning of the fight. But for the first time all night, the power in the house had shifted. The thunder outside rolled like a warning, shaking the fragile quiet that had settled after Ethan snapped the laptop shut. Daniel shifted in his sleep, his small body pressed against his father's chest, but didn't wake. Ethan kept one hand gently cradling his son and the other resting protectively on the boy's back, his eyes fixed on Claire. Her face was tense, her calm facade slipping further with each second. The cameras still blinked, recording everything, but without the laptop screen's glow, the room felt darker, more dangerous. Claire broke the silence first, her voice sharp. "Turn it back on." Ethan didn't move. "No." Her lips curled into something between a sneer and a threat. "If you think you can just walk out of here with him, you're wrong. The court gave me custody for a reason. You're a visitor in his life, Ethan. That's all." Ethan's jaw tightened, but he refused to rise to her bait. Instead, he spoke quietly, controlled. "A visitor doesn't get called in the middle of the night. A visitor doesn't find his son half-starved. I'm not just a visitor. I'm his father, and I'm not letting this continue." Claire's eyes narrowed, her calm finally cracking. "You'll regret this. You think anyone will believe you? You've always been reckless, unstable. And now," she gestured toward the cameras, "I've got proof." Her words chilled him, but he didn't show it. He realized every step, every word he spoke was being captured. She had crafted a trap, and one wrong move could still spring it shut. He shifted Daniel slightly, whispering softly, "It's okay, buddy. Dad's here." The boy stirred, mumbling incoherently before drifting again into a heavy, syrup-laced sleep. Ethan turned his attention back to Claire. If you cared about him, you wouldn't need to drug him. You wouldn't need strangers to pity him. You just take care of him. Her mask broke, anger flashing raw and unfiltered. You think it's that simple? Do you know what it's like to live with bills piling up? No help. No one caring unless they see a sob story? They don't give money for happy kids. They want suffering. And I gave it to them. Ethan's chest heaved while rising in his throat. He had suspected, but hearing her admit it so bluntly ripped something inside him. Claire stepped closer, lowering her voice to a venomous whisper. "And don't you dare look at me like you're better. You ran off to your apartment while I stayed here. I did what I had to do." Ethan forced himself calm. "What you had to do? You poisoned your own son, Claire." Her eyes darted toward the door suddenly, as if remembering something. Ethan caught the flicker, his instincts surging. He followed her gaze and saw it. A small red light glowing faintly from the hallway. Another camera. His stomach dropped. She had covered the entire house. Every move, every word was part of her stage. Claire smirked when she saw him notice. "You can't win. Even now, they're watching. Every second you stand there looking furious. Every word you spit at me. It just proves my story. That you're dangerous. That Daniel isn't safe with you. Ethan's pulse thundered in his ears. She wasn't just playing for strangers online. She was building an arsenal against him. Footage she could twist for custody battles, for police, for anyone who might listen. For the first time that night, Ethan felt the crushing weight of how far she had gone. He wasn't just fighting for Daniel's safety in the moment. He was fighting against an entire narrative she had built piece by piece. But as fear pressed against him, something stronger rose to meet it. Clarity. He couldn't shout. He couldn't smash the cameras. He couldn't give her the reaction she wanted. He had to outthink her. Ethan tightened his grip on Daniel, his voice calm, almost eerily steady. You're right, Claire. They are watching. And when they see what you've done, they'll finally see who you really are. Her smirk faltered just for a second. The storm cracked outside, lightning flooding the room with blinding light. In that brief flash, Ethan made a silent vow. He would not lose to her game. He would gather every piece of evidence, expose her completely, and take Daniel away from this house forever. And as the thunder shook the walls, Claire's voice cut through the darkness, cold and final. You won't leave here with him. The storm outside showed no sign of easing. Lightning streaking across the sky, thunder shaking the walls like a warning drum. Ethan tightened his hold on Daniel, feeling the boy's shallow breaths against his chest. The child's body was limp, unnaturally heavy, as though every ounce of strength had been drained away. Across the room, Claire stood rigid, her arms folded, the faint glow of the blinking cameras casting her in shards of red light. Her words hung in the air like a curse. You won't leave here with him. Ethan steadied himself, his pulse pounding, but his voice measured. So this was your plan all along. Set me up. Make me look like the unstable father, while you collect pity money from strangers. You wanted me to walk right into it. Her lips curled into a thin smile, sharp and deliberate. And you did. Ethan's chest tightened. For the first time, he saw it clearly. Every detail had been orchestrated. The pre-recorded voicemail, the empty fridge, the scattered toys untouched for days, Daniel weakened by syrup and hunger. It wasn't just negligence. It was a performance, staged for an audience Ethan couldn't see, but could feel lurking behind every camera lens. You don't get it, Claire continued, her tone smooth now, almost rehearsed. Those people out there, they don't just donate, they depend on me. On us. They log in every night, waiting to see Daniel. His suffering is their story. And when you barged in tonight, she gestured at him with a sweep of her hand. You gave them exactly what they wanted. Conflict. A villain. Ethan's stomach turned. A villain. That's how she saw him. Not a father trying to protect his son, but a character in her twisted narrative. He glanced toward the hallway where the faint red light of another camera glowed. How much had they seen? His raised voice, his threats, his fury? All of it could be clipped, edited, reshaped into something damning. Daniel stirred faintly, letting out a soft whimper. Ethan rubbed his back gently, whispering, "It's okay, champ. I'm right here." But his own voice shook. Claire's eyes softened for a moment, but not with guilt. It was satisfaction. Do you know how much we've made in just the last week? Enough to cover the mortgage, the bills, the car. Enough to keep going for months. You couldn't do that. You never could. Ethan snapped his gaze back to her, fury flashing. By destroying him? By turning our son into a spectacle? Claire stepped closer, lowering her voice to a venomous whisper. Don't say our like you still have a claim. The court decided. He's mine. Ethan's fists curled, but he forced himself to remain still. He couldn't let her bait him. Not now. Instead, he let the silence stretch, studying her face, the twitch in her jaw, the flicker in her eyes when she mentioned money. For all her control, there was something brittle underneath. Slowly, he pulled her phone from his pocket again, holding it up where she could see. You made one mistake, Claire. You left the evidence behind. That voicemail, the one you staged, it's saved here. Timestamps. Metadata. Proof. For the first time all night, true panic flickered across her face before she quickly masked it. You think a judge will care about that? You think anyone will believe you over me? Ethan's voice was calm, steady, but filled with quiet certainty. When they see the bottles, when they see him barely able to keep his eyes open, when they hear your own words admitting this is about money, yes, they'll believe me. Her jaw clenched, her composure cracking. You're bluffing. Ethan took a step forward, still holding Daniel protectively in his arms. Try me. The storm thundered again, rattling the glass panes in the window. For the first time that night, Claire looked cornered. The power in her words faltered, her confidence shaken. But even in her fear, a dangerous glint remained in her eyes. She wasn't done fighting, and Ethan knew. The worst of her plan was still waiting to be uncovered. The storm outside swelled into a roar, wind pressing against the house as though it wanted in. Inside, the tension was thicker than the air. Ethan stood firm, holding Daniel close, Claire's phone still in his hand. Claire's eyes flicked to it like a predator watching prey, her calm unraveling thread by thread. You think that phone saves you? She hissed, stepping further into the room. One voicemail, one timestamp, that means nothing. I'll tell them you stole it, that you broke in and grabbed whatever you could have framed me. They'll see the cameras. They'll see you standing here threatening me. You'll be finished, Ethan. Her voice carried a strange confidence again, like someone clinging to the edges of control. Ethan felt Daniel stir in his arms, the boy's head heavy on his shoulder, his breath shallow. Every second he stayed here was another second of risk. Ethan forced his voice steady. The difference, Claire, is that now I know the truth. And sooner or later, everyone else will too. She laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. Truth? You think truth matters? Perception is what matters. And you look exactly how I've painted you. She gestured toward the cameras, the blinking red eyes scattered like traps across the room. A father who storms in the middle of the night, shouting, threatening. Dangerous. Unstable. Exactly why I got custody in the first place. Ethan's gut twisted. He could almost see it already. The footage clipped, edited, posted online, or dragged into court. Him looming over her, his voice sharp, his fury raw. Claire knew exactly how to stage her story. Daniel stirred again, whispering faintly, Dad. His small voice snapped Ethan back to focus. He couldn't falter. Not now. Ethan turned back to Claire, lowering his tone to something calm, almost cold. You've underestimated me before. Don't do it again. For the first time, she faltered. But just as quickly, she lashed back. You want proof? Fine. She crossed the room, yanking open the closet door. Ethan tensed, bracing himself. Inside, stacked neatly on the floor were boxes, dozens of them. Equipment, spare cameras, cables, notebooks filled with scribbled donation tallies. Ethan's stomach dropped as he scanned the rows of figures. Thousands of dollars. Every cent cataloged. Claire's voice was sharp, triumphant. This is bigger than you think. Bigger than just him. I built something here. A business. A following. Do you think a few bottles of syrup matter when I've got hundreds of people sending money every night? They depend on me. On him. Ethan's chest burned. He wanted to shout, to rip the boxes apart, but he held himself still. Each revelation dug the pit deeper. Claire wasn't just dangerous. She was invested, entrenched. She would fight to the bitter end to protect what she'd built. Daniel whimpered, his hand twitching weakly. Ethan tightened his hold, speaking with quiet steel. He's not your product. He's your son, and I won't let you keep doing this. Claire's smirk returned, though thinner now, more desperate. And what will you do? Call the police? Walk out with him? Either way, you lose. If you take him, I'll have you arrested for kidnapping. If you stay, I'll have proof of you threatening me. You can't win. Her words hit like a trap snapping shut. Ethan felt the weight of them pressing against him, the reality of how carefully she had crafted this. Every road out seemed blocked, but as despair clawed at him, he glanced at Daniel, his fragile face, his whispered pleas, and something stronger took root. Resolve. He shifted Daniel gently in his arms, meeting Claire's gaze head on. You're wrong. I've already won. Because no matter what you think, he trusts me. He called for me, not you. And that's the one thing you can't fake. Claire's smirk faltered, her jaw tightening as her eyes darkened. She didn't like losing control, Not even for a second. The storm crashed louder outside, shaking the glass panes. Inside, the walls of Claire's carefully staged world were beginning to crack. But Ethan knew, if he made one wrong move now, she'd tighten her grip again, harder than ever. And in that fragile silence, both of them understood. The final confrontation was coming. The storm outside howled like it was trying to rip the house apart. Rain slammed the windows in furious bursts, and the thin walls shuddered with every crack of thunder. Inside, Ethan stood firm, Daniel clutched protectively in his arms, while Claire loomed just a few feet away, her eyes sharp with defiance. The open closet behind her revealed the boxes stacked high, cameras, receipts, notebooks stuffed with donation records. The proof of her scheme sat in plain sight, mocking Ethan with every scribbled number. He tightened his jaw. You've turned your own son into a business, into a prop. Claire's face twisted, half sneer, half desperation. Don't you dare judge me. Do you think I had a choice? Do you know what it's like to have no money, no help? You left me with everything. The house, the bills, the endless responsibility. You walked away. Ethan's voice broke, fury edged with grief. I didn't walk away. The court ripped him from me and handed him to you. And this is what you did with him. Her voice rose, trembling with something unstable. At least I kept him fed. Ethan cut her off, stepping forward. Fed? He's starving. Weak. Drugs so strangers online can send you their pity dollars. That's not feeding him. That's destroying him. Daniel stirred in his arms, his head lolling weakly. Ethan kissed the boy's damp hair, whispering, I've got you, buddy. Then he looked back at Claire, his voice low but steady. This ends tonight. Claire's eyes flickered with panic. For the first time, her confidence cracked visibly. Her gaze darted to the cameras, still blinking, capturing every second. Her voice shook but carried venom. If you walk out that door with him, I'll tell the police you broke in to steal him. You'll lose him forever. Do you understand? Forever. Ethan's heart pounded, but his grip on Daniel only tightened. He took a slow step toward the doorway. Then call them. Because when they come, they'll see him like this. They'll see the bottles, the cameras, the boxes. They'll hear that voicemail you staged. They'll hear it all. And it won't be me they take away. Her face blanched, anger and fear warring behind her eyes. For a moment, silence fell heavy, the storm outside filling the gap. Then Claire snapped. She lunged toward him, her hand reaching for the phone in his pocket. Ethan twisted his body, shielding Daniel, his shoulders slamming against the dresser with a thud. Daniel whimpered softly, half awake, clutching his father's shirt with weak fingers. Give it to me, Claire screamed, her voice shrill. You don't understand. Without this, we have nothing. Ethan's chest burned with fury. We? This isn't about us. It's about him. And you've been killing him slowly for money. She froze at his words, her hand still gripping at his jacket. For a flicker of a second, her face softened, guilt flashing through the cracks of her rage. But it vanished as quickly as it came, replaced by a hollow determination. No one will believe you, she whispered. Ethan steadied himself, his voice low, certain, each word deliberate. They will, because this time I have proof. And because he called for me, not you. Claire's hand slipped away. Her breathing was ragged, shallow, her composure fractured beyond repair. The woman who once wore control like armor now stood stripped of it, trembling, her empire of lies shaking beneath her. Ethan turned toward the stairs, Daniel safe in his arms, the phone gripped tightly in his free hand. Each step forward felt like a battle won, but the weight of danger still pressed against his back. Behind him, Claire's voice cracked through the storm, sharp and desperate. If you walk out that door, Ethan, you'll regret it. More than you ever have in your life. He didn't turn back. He tightened his hold on Daniel, whispering to his son as he descended into the darkness below. Almost safe, buddy. Almost safe. But deep inside, he knew the fight wasn't over. The final reckoning was still coming. Ethan's footsteps echoed down the narrow staircase, each creak of the wood drowned out by the thunder shaking the house. Daniel's head rested on his shoulder, the boy's breath shallow, his arms clinging weakly around his father's neck. Ethan whispered softly, "Just hold on, champ. We're almost out of here." Behind him, Claire's voice cut through the storm, sharp and frantic. "If you leave now, Ethan, everything you think you have will collapse. They'll take him from you. They'll take everything." Ethan didn't turn back. The front door loomed ahead, the storm rattling against it like an ally urging him forward. He shifted Daniel carefully in his arms and reached for the knob. But just as his hand brushed the metal, a sudden flash of blue and red filled the windows. Sirens wailed, growing louder, then stopped abruptly in the driveway. His chest tightened. The police. For a heartbeat, hope surged. Maybe this nightmare would finally end. Maybe justice had arrived. He opened the door to the storm and the flood of flashing lights beyond. Two officers stepped from their patrol car, coats pulled tight against the rain. Their flashlights cut through the darkness, beams landing on Ethan immediately. "Sir, put the child down," one of them ordered firmly. Ethan froze, the words piercing him like ice. "No, you don't understand." Claire's voice rang out behind him, loud, clear, rehearsed. "Officers, thank God you're here. He broke in and tried to take my son. He's unstable." Ethan's blood ran cold. She had called him before. She had planned this. The officers raised cautious hands, approaching slowly. "Sir, we need you to calm down. Let's talk this through." Ethan shook his head, his voice breaking with desperation. "No, you don't get it. Look at him." He angled Daniel forward, showing his pale face, his limp body. "He's drugged. He hasn't eaten. She's been using him, live streaming him, for money." The officers exchanged uncertain glances. One said, "Ma'am, is this true?" Claire's tears came instantly, her voice trembling with perfect fragility. "He's lying. He's been harassing me since the divorce. He barged in here, screaming. Look at him, he's dangerous." She gestured toward the blinking cameras still recording upstairs. "It's all on video." The weight of her trap crushed down on Ethan. This was exactly what she wanted. The image of him standing there in the storm, defiant, her son in his arms, while she played the broken, protective mother. But then Daniel stirred, his small voice barely audible over the storm. "No, Dad's safe, no more cameras." The words were faint but enough. One officer's brow furrowed. "What did he say?" Ethan clutched the phone in his free hand, pulling it out with shaking fingers. "Check this. Check the voicemail she sent me tonight. It wasn't from him. It was pre-recorded. She staged the whole thing." The officer took the phone, scrolling quickly. His flashlight beam illuminated the screen. A voicemail file, time-stamped 12:15 a.m., cued from Claire's device. The officer's jaw tightened as he played it. The desperate voice filled the night air. "Dad, I'm alone, starving. Please save me." Then Daniel, weak but clear, whispered again from Ethan's shoulder. "I didn't call him. I was asleep." The silence that followed was deafening. Claire's face froze, her mask cracking wide open. The second officer looked at her sharply. "Ma'am, we're going to need to see those cameras. And the medicine bottles." Claire's voice faltered. That's not what it looks like." But her trembling tone no longer held the same power. The officers stepped past Ethan, their flashlights cutting across the hallway, landing on the glowing red eyes of the cameras still recording. On a nightstand, half-empty bottles of syrup gleamed under the light. The walls of Claire's story began to collapse, the evidence pouring out faster than she could cover it. Ethan stood in the doorway, Daniel pressed against him, his chest shaking with relief. For the first time, he felt the tide turning. But as one officer moved to radio for backup, Claire's eyes locked on Ethan's. Behind her faltering tears, a flicker of something darker burned, a final, desperate edge. The battle wasn't over yet. The flashing blue and red lights painted the living room in fractured color, the storm outside raging as though it refused to quiet until the truth was fully revealed. Ethan stood near the doorway, holding Daniel close, while the two officers combed through the house. Their beams of light caught every damning detail, the cameras blinking, the open boxes of equipment, the bottles of syrup by the bed. Claire hovered in the middle of the room, her tears now smeared, her breathing erratic. Every bit of control she had clung to all night was slipping through her hands. One officer returned from upstairs, holding a notebook thick with scribbled numbers and donation tallies. "Sir," he said to his partner, "this looks like financial records tied to the live stream. There's thousands here." The other officer nodded grimly, then turned to Claire. "Ma'am, this doesn't look good. We'll need to take you in for questioning." Her face went pale, but then, suddenly, her composure snapped back like brittle glass shattering. She lunged forward, pointing a trembling finger at Ethan. "He planned this. Don't you see? He broke in, stole my phone, planted things. He wants to ruin me." Ethan's voice broke, but it carried steel. "No, Claire. You ruined yourself. Look at him." He shifted Daniel forward slightly. The boy stirred, his voice weak but clear. "Mom, please, no more cameras." The words silenced the room. Even the storm seemed to pause for a beat. Claire's face crumpled, her mask on. For a fleeting moment, guilt flashed across her features, raw, human, almost redemptive. But then it hardened into something else, rage. "You'll regret this, Ethan," she spat, her voice sharp as glass. "If I lose him, you lose him too. I'll make sure of it." The officers stepped between them, one moving to cuff her wrists. She thrashed against their grip, screaming, "You think you've won? He'll hate you for this. He'll see what you did to his mother." Daniel whimpered softly, burying his face in Ethan's chest. Ethan kissed his son's hair, his tears mixing with the rain still dripping from his jacket. His voice was quiet, but filled with unwavering resolve. "No, Claire. One day he'll see what you did to him, and he'll know I stopped it." The officers guided Claire out into the storm, her protests fading as the doors shut behind them. For the first time all night, the house was still. The blinking red eyes of the cameras remained, silent witnesses to the horror they had recorded. Ethan looked around the wreckage, the scattered toys, the notebooks of blood money, the empty bottles. This house had been a stage, every corner turned into a prop in Claire's cruel play. But it was over now. He carried Daniel to the couch, laying him down gently, covering him with a blanket. The boy's small fingers clutched his father's hand, even in sleep. Ethan sat beside him, exhaustion pressing down, but relief keeping him upright. When the officers returned, one placed a reassuring hand on Ethan's shoulder. "We'll need statements, but you did the right thing. He's safe now." Ethan nodded, his throat too tight to speak. He looked down at Daniel, fragile, yes, but alive, breathing, no longer trapped in the glow of cameras. The storm outside finally began to ease, the rain softening, the thunder rolling further into the distance. Inside, the silence felt different now. Not heavy with dread, but fragile with hope. Ethan leaned close to his son and whispered, barely audible, "No more cameras. Never again. You're safe, buddy. I promise." Daniel stirred in his sleep, his lips curving into the faintest of smiles. For the first time in months, Ethan felt something break free inside him. Not just relief, but the certainty that no matter how long the fight ahead in court or in life, he had already won the only battle that mattered. His son's trust, his son's safety. And as the first light of dawn crept into the storm-clouded sky, Ethan knew this night, the night that froze his blood, had also given him something unshakable, the chance to start again, father and son, free from the shadows of Claire's cruelty.